the keys are to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show. This is going to be a good one. We're going to be talking about some of the 49ers red shirt players. And if you've been watching my red shirt rundown, I've went through most of these guys, and there's some very impressive talent. But today I'm going to be talking about which one of these red shirt players has the best chance to make the 49ers roster in 2023. Of course, it's not easy. There's a lot of talented football players, and the 49ers got a lot last year that they redshirted. Redshirt means they had them around the organization, whether it was on the roster or on the practice squad, or most of these guys were, and they develop them, looking for an opportunity for them to be able to step in and replace some of the depth potentially that you've lost. You know, as players move on, there has to be a void that's filled. You can either do that in the draft, free agency, or with undrafted or late round picks that you put on your practice squad and eventually develop. We've seen this work successfully at several positions throughout the years. 49ers draft late. Guys like DJ Jones, they end up making the roster and making an impact eventually. Guys undrafted like Kevin Givens, who have now slid into a rotation with the 49ers. Even guys like Colton McKivitz, who went the practice route way a little bit differently. He was waived and then on the practice squad, and now he's going to be a starter. Every time that happens, you have to fill the void of one of these players missing. So who are the guys that have the best chance to make the 49ers 53-man roster that were last year on the practice squad or redshirted? Last year, a red shirt, I'm going to mention him, but I'm going to say he's already going to make the roster, so I don't really want to talk about him too much, is Nick Zakelj. Nick Zakelj was redshirted, but on the active roster last year. So I think the likelihood of him being on the 49ers active roster in 2023 is very good. You throw in the fact they've talked about him changing his body and doing a really good job of working on his athleticism as well. And I think Nick Zakelj is a solid person to make this 53. So I'm going to kind of leave him out because I do think he's got the best chance. But let's talk about the guys who did not play for the 49ers on their active roster in 2022. And I'm going to start with the one that I think is the most likely to make this 49ers 53-man roster, even though it's absolutely talented position, is Kalia Davis. Last year, he was on the NFI, or the non-football injury list. They drafted him in the 6th round knowing he was more than likely going to miss the entire season because of an injury. He's such an interesting prospect because he's going from playing linebacker to defensive line. He made the transition in college at University of Central Florida, and he takes that athleticism and applies it to the defensive line. He's got a lot of really good athleticism that allows him to have a quick first step. He gets off the ball tremendously fast, and he penetrates, and he makes it difficult for offensive guards to be able to handle his speed and power combination. So I think he's got a real shot. The 49ers can realistically keep 5 defensive tackles: Armstead, Hargrave, Kinlaw, Givens, and Kalia Davis. And I think Davis could make an impact on the 49ers at some point during the season as he's a part of this rotation. The likelihood of one of the players ahead of him getting injured between Kevin Givens and Kinlaw are pretty good. And so that means he can have an opportunity to make an impact. Plus, I think the 49ers like him. John Lynch talked about the fact he reminds him of DJ Jones. If that's the case, then yeah, he's not going anywhere. That's high praise. DJ Jones was a great player for the 49ers who went and got a lot of money in free agency. So they're not going to want to walk away from Kalia Davis, and they're going to want him to make an impact. So the likelihood of him making this 53-man roster is really, really good. And I think at some point him making an impact on the season could be pretty good. Will it be significant to the fact that you're like, wow, he's the next big thing? Potentially. Go watch my video, Kalia Davis, the next big thing. That video is out now. Also, another guy that I think has a really good shot, because you have an open position in the starting lineup, and that is linebacker Marcelino Ball. I think Ball has a really good shot of making this 49ers 53-man roster for a couple of reasons. Number one, he was on the team last year, ended up being on the practice squad, and he understands what this system is all about. He's been in the same coaching group with Coach Hollins, so he's going to have a really good idea of what's expected of him, even though there are two young rookies looking to come in and take his position. But the fact that Azeez Al-Shire went and took a free agent contract with the Tennessee Titans freed up a starting spot, which means as things happen, you have Oren Burks slide into the starting spot, which means there's a void as a backup. The 49ers could easily keep Ball, who has a nice combination of size and speed. Did not used to be size, but he's put in the work and got that size. You could see in preseason last year that he could find the football and he can make plays, getting interceptions, making tackles. He's got sideline-to-sideline speed with the ability to cover in space. He's a very nice player. You throw in the fact that at minicamp and at OTAs, he was going and taking reps as Mike linebacker is highly significant. Azeez Al-Shire was the backup Mike linebacker. Dre Greenlaw doesn't play Mike. So having a guy that could step in for Fred Warner is important. The other guy that does that is Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles. The 49ers weren't willing to tender him a contract as a restricted free agent. They did bring him back on a very cheap, team-friendly deal. But if Marcelino Ball can prove that not only can he help on special teams, but he can play Mike linebacker at a higher level than Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, that means he's got a really good chance to make this team. The 49ers, even if they keep 5 linebackers, one of them could be Marcelino Ball, and potentially the other 2 rookie linebackers battling it out to see who the 5th linebacker is. If they keep 6, I think he's a shoo-in. Him, Jalen Graham, and D. Winters could easily slide in as Mike, Sam, and Will as a backup unit for the starting group of Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, and Oren Burks. So I think Marcelino Ball is got a real shot to make this 53-man roster. I think him and Kalia Davis are, almost locks. I think Marcelino could run into some problems if his game doesn't translate to the level everyone's expecting. Then if Jalen Graham, who's got a nice size, a speed combination, and D. Winters, who absolutely flies, could potentially take over that role. But we'll see. I think him playing Mike is a good sign for Marcelino Ball, and I think he could make this roster. So let's talk about some guys that are going to have a little bit of a tougher time. Taylor Hawkins, the safety from San Diego State, I think he would have had a real good shot of making this roster if they wouldn't have drafted Jair Brown. I think with that case, it's going to be tough for him. You add Miles Hartsfield to the combination as well, and it's going to be really hard for Taylor Hawkins. He could end up on the 49ers practice squad for a second straight year, and then we'll see what happens. But Hawkins is a fun player, but I think minus an injury, he doesn't have a real shot to compete to make this roster. You never know, but with George Odom and Miles Hartsfield ahead of him, who are both really good on special teams and pretty good instinctive players, I think he's going to be a tough sell for Taylor Hawkins. Quanterus Knight is one of my favorite players on the entire team. Not only is he a tremendous person, got to interact with him at training camp, but he's a fantastic player as well. The instincts are through the roof, and the 49ers just keep adding talent at the position. If you would have told me that, the things that happened last year with Jimmy Ward moving on, I would think Quanterus Knight had a real shot to be a nickel corner for the 49ers in 2023. But bringing in Isaiah Oliver, it's going to make it more difficult for Q Knight to be able to get on this 49ers 53-man roster. He was the practice squad player of the year last year. He's just a fun guy. He's a spark plug. He's spectacular. He's going to light it up when they get into training camp and the preseason. But I just don't know if he can make this roster. I hope he can, but I think he's kind of on the outside looking in. So I didn't have him as one of the best to make this roster. Same with Jason Poe. Even though I love Poe, I think he's a good player. I think he's dealing with a little bit of a size problem compared to the other players at the position. But it's more than that. It's just the talent that the 49ers continue to bring in. They already brought in John Feliciano at the guard position. They talked about Nick Sakel stepping up and playing better. And those two guys are behind young player Spencer Burford and Aaron Banks. So it's just tough for Poe to get in the starting lineup or get into the 53-man roster lineup. Then you throw in the fact that they went out and they got a highly touted undrafted free agent in Joey Fisher and another one from Hawaii in Il Manning, and it just makes the competition even higher. Poe's athleticism has definitely got everyone's attention, and he could definitely do something for the 49ers, but it's likely he ends up on the practice squad for a second straight season. And last but not least is Tay Martin. Tay Martin was a guy that came up on the 49ers active roster a couple times last year, being elevated from the practice squad. But realistically, he's not going to be able to get a roster spot over the guys they have ahead of him. The top 5 guys are pretty secure, and then there's guys right with him that are very talented. Ronnie Bell, the new 7th-round pick, probably does the things Tay Martin does a little bit better than he does. Of course, he's taller than Ronnie Bell, but as far as catching the football and being able to make plays, I think Ronnie Bell's a little bit better. Chris Conley also is a veteran who plays special teams, but at 6'3" and runs a 4.3, he's got more dynamic playmaking ability than Tay Martin, which I think puts him behind the 8 ball, potentially getting a 6 wide receiver spot if the 49ers decide to keep 6. So kind of a tough situation to be in for Tay Martin. Of course, injuries happen, and there's always an opportunity. And if something, heaven forbid, happened to Juwan Jennings, then I think Chris Conley and Tay Martin and Ronnie Bell would have a real shot to get onto this roster. And I think it's going to be a tough battle, but never count out big play Tay. He's always got a shot. I just think that the likelihood of him making it are not good, and he'll probably spend 2023 on the 49ers practice squad, maybe become available a couple of times depending on situation. So the likelihood is of these redshirt players, Nick Zakel's going to be on the 53 active roster, and Kalia Davis and Marcelino Ball I feel good about. I say Zakel's number 1, Kalia Davis number 2, Marcelino Ball is the number 3 guy I believe is most likely of the redshirt players to make this 49ers 53-man roster. And if it happens, it just shows that the 49ers continue to use this type of process, bringing players in, developing them, and then putting them onto your active roster. A player like Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles has been doing that as well, and now he could be translating out and getting replaced with another guy that does it that's younger and cheaper, the 49ers way. It's draft and develop, or in this case, sign undrafted and develop. It's working out for the 49ers. Good coaching staff. Kyle Shanahan's done a good job of putting together guys that can teach this system and teach techniques. I love it. So let me know what you think these potential players that the 49ers will have on their roster. I'm really excited about these guys that can make it. Do you believe that Zakel, Ball, and Kalia Davis can make this team as redshirt football players? I'm really curious what you have to say about it. Like the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. On the push for 4,000 subs, getting really close. Hoping to get there before training camp. So if we can, that'd be great. Thank you so much for watching. Looking forward to the next one. Plenty of content coming your way. But until then, stay safe and remember the right way is always the 49ers way.